Graziano of Zion Memorial Chapel and Cox and Graziano Funeral Homes. Jenifer is here to discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jenifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good morning, Westchester. It's 9 a.m. on Monday, and that means it's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of both Mamaroneck and Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every week I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point, and through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. If you're joining us on air this morning on 1460 WVOX, question, comments, and calls to 914-636-0110. Hello to Kevin in the controls, and good morning, Facebook Live viewers. Thank you for tuning in on this freezing cold late April Monday morning. Hi to Tim behind the camera. Thank you for joining us. And the face you're going to see with me today is very recognizable if you follow the show. Sal Di Costanzo, an elder lawyer in Westchester County, offices in the north and the south. And every time he comes on air, someone gets the impetus to call him because they realize the very important, very sensitive matters that Sal deals in every day. These could be very costly mistakes if you don't have the right help when seeking an attorney. So that's why we say go to the expert, the elder law attorney, Sal Di Costanzo. Good morning.
Good morning, Jen. Good morning, Tim.
We have you on as a recurring guest to kind of dispel the myths. And there's so much misinformation out there. And as I mentioned, it could be very costly if you are estate planning or your administrative legal planning is not done correctly. So happy to have you back. And I'm going to raise your mic here. All the time you sat in that seat, you think you would have known the drill here, Sal, but okay, here we are. So first of all, good morning. For those who have not had the pleasure of meeting you through the show, tell us a bit about yourself and your area of expertise.
So I'm an elder law estate planning attorney here in Westchester County. I'm also an accountant. Busy time of the year with the extension of the tax deadline to May 17th. And we have two offices, one in Rye and the other in Yorktown Heights. So we've got the county covered. If you're in northern Westchester or if you're in southern Putnam or even Dutchess County, we can assist in that area up in the Yorktown office, and obviously down here in the Rye office. We've been here for quite some time.
Yes, you have. So I want to go through kind of all the topics that we usually cover today, go through FAQs and again, misconceptions, clearing up the misconceptions. Let's start, though, with COVID. So with everything that happened last year during lockdown and quarantine and the barriers that existed between loved ones outside the hospital and inside the hospital, as well as nursing homes, we had the remote execution of legal documents. We had a lot of electronic signatures. Let's talk about now that we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and some of those physical barriers have been removed and we're able to access our loved ones. Do you suggest going back and reviewing the documents that were executed during the height of the pandemic and also, amending signatures, or are those documents that were done electronically valid and upholding today?
That's a great question, Jen, and it's something that we've discussed in the office. Let's just refresh our audience's recollection as to just exactly what these remote signing procedures were. When COVID started, Governor Cuomo signed an executive order allowing us to sign documents via Zoom.
Yes.
In other words, remotely signing these documents. And why is that important? Well, most of the estate planning documents that we work with require, witnesses.
Correct.
Notarizations. And obviously, if you're not face-to-face, if you're not in person, the typical statute that we work off of doesn't allow for the signing of the documents. So this executive order was signed last year, and it's been consistently renewed.
Yeah, no, it keeps
right?
There's extensions that are.
Yeah, and we still have it right now, but we're not using it as often as we were last year. But what we saw last year is that the reading, people didn't have a tremendous amount of time to really put this thing together, the executive order, right? So it was a best effort to make things work. But just like anything else in the practice of law, there's different viewpoints, there's different opinions, there's different procedural questions. And we've already taken second and third looks at how we've drafted some of the documents using remote notarization. And early on in the process, we ended up re-signing some of the documents just because there was too much chatter out there as to how to do certain things.
Well, how do you attest to the sound mind and body if you're not a physical witness?
It's a great question. Yeah,
and especially because, again, if you go back in time, there was pure panic everywhere.
That's right.
So, you could see duress, you could see lacking capacity, you could see how those signatures can be challenged. Yep. And especially if you have cases where, let's say, there were multiple children with feuding opinions.
That's the problem.
That's where I can see this becoming a great big mess.
That's right. So by Zoom, a lot of the hospitals and nursing homes were amenable to working with Zoom, and they would help, they would assist us in setting up the computer. And so I could see, obviously, on Zoom, and I can have a really nice dialogue just as if we were in person. But I don't know if somebody's standing on the other side of the computer.
Absolutely.
Right?
Did those nurses act as witnesses in those cases, or any hospital staff members? They did?
They could.
No, but you're right. You don't know what's behind the lens.
I mean, you're asking
there could
the
be
questions.
4 people with Tim right now.
That's right.
You just take my word for it that it's just him. But
that just goes to the credibility of the people in the room. There's been some pushback. There have been some efforts to make the executive orders permanent, or at least change the statutes in New York State so we could do this on a permanent basis. And there's been a lot of pushback. So to answer your question, it would be a good idea to revisit how the executive orders were followed through.
And there's, it's about perspective. There's probably more clarity of thought right now. So
Tremendous.
Now would be a great time to, like I said, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, but now would be a great time to do so. It's about administrative housekeeping. I mean, even if you have all your plans done, they probably should be reviewed. I think
Absolutely.
It's every 5 years, you say?
Well, we tell people every 2 to 5 years, but upon the occurrence of an event.
Very true.
Right. I'm not going to know if there was a birth or a death or a divorce in your family unless you tell me.
Right.
Right.
Very
so
true.
you should call us.
Lawyer, not mind reader.
Well,
Absolutely.
That's another discussion for another day.
So going on, tip number 1 then, review any substantive legal documents that you executed last year during the height of the pandemic.
Yes.
And if you executed them on your own or did, something quick like, Legal Zoom or what was it, We the People's, the other one, the document service.
So many people do that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you're not, most people are not following the formalities of a will execution, for instance.
Correct. And again, in order for the will to be valid in New York, there's certain criteria and checkpoints it has to hit.
That's right.
So you're right. People might be thinking, oh, let me do this quickly so I have something. But what you have might not be worth the paper you print the receipt on.
Inevitably, when we get calls all the time from people that have drafted their wills online and they want to come into my office to sign them.
No.
And
it's like bringing your own bottle of wine to the restaurant.
We don't really allow that because it exposes us to a whole host of different issues.
Absolutely.
But what I do see on a regular basis is that some people that do that, they come in and they present their will and they signed it, but they didn't follow the formalities as to the will execution with witnesses and questions that are asked of the witnesses, so forth and so on.
Absolutely. And so, again, all the good that you think that you did when it comes time to execute the will, it was all for naught.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Reason number 500 as to why you should contact an elder attorney when you're in the process of planning. So moving on to changes, misconceptions, new information, the famous look back period.
Yep.
And I see this every day in my line of work. We do a lot of pre-planning for Medicaid at the funeral home. And, you always, when someone comes in and they were prepared well by their attorney and when they were not. When they went to a specialist, somebody who specifically works in this field, who's kept abreast of the changes and the changing laws. And when they went to a general practitioner who's, well-intentioned and obviously intelligent, but lacking the requisite specific knowledge. Look back periods for Medicaid. There have been some changes. So I'll let you take over and tell our listeners and viewers what they are.
Well, it continues to be one of the most misunderstood areas of our practice. I tend to be, I tend to be repetitive in the topics that we discuss, not only here, but articles that I write, blogs that I write. And sometimes I say, I really don't know what to write about. And I wrote about this already. It's amazing that you could write about the same topic 100 times.
People still don't know.
Different people read it. There's still questions and misconceptions. You really could. But one of the issues out there is the interpretation of the look-back periods.
Well, and go back to basics. What is a look-back period?
So if you are trying to, here's the litany of questioning, right? Can we agree that we may get sick someday? And the answer is obviously yes. There's always a jokester in the room that doesn't think that we can get sick. And if we can get sick someday, is it possible that we can end up in a nursing home? And the answer is yes. And again, there's always somebody in the room that refuses to admit that they could end up in a nursing home.
Absolutely.
But I'm sorry to tell everybody that, even against your wishes, you could end up in a nursing home. There's a lot of different ways that you could end up in a nursing home. If that happens, the next question is how are you going to pay for it?
And give us just a brief idea, an approximate. I know you can't do this with specificity, but going into a nursing home today, a decent nursing home, and I'll couch it that way. Give us an idea of a monthly or weekly or daily cost.
$15,000 a month.
$15,000 a month, and that's a basic.
Yeah, I mean, it's 12. There's some nursing homes that are about 18.
Right.
But $500 a day in this area is the norm.
So an important number to put in people's mind that at least starts to get them thinking of, like you said, it's a possibility we could all face.
That's right.
And no one's exempt from dying, and no one's listen, is it great to think that you're just going to live your life unscathed until the end? But it rarely happens. You see it, I see it every day. So being mindful of that number, hopefully it makes some people right now say, "Oh my God,"
Well, hopefully it's I asked the question, how are you going to pay for it? And what I want our listeners to do is I want you to think about how you would pay for your care. And there's very limited options. We tell people there are generally about 4 options to pay for your care. The first one is pay for it yourself.
Right.
That's not planning. The second one would be long-term care insurance, which you should probably look into long-term care insurance, but many people can't afford it. Many people can't qualify for it.
They're high premiums and not everything is covered necessarily.
Right. But it is something that should be explored. Then you have Medicare. And people confuse Medicare and Medicaid all the time.
Absolutely. And there's also a misconception as to what Medicare covers.
Medicare only pays for, at best, 100 days in a nursing home.
Of short-term nursing rehab that follows the hospital stay.
That's right. You have to have a three-night hospital stay. Another discussion for another day. But if you are listening, you see that I said there are 4 ways to pay for your care. The last one's Medicaid. You have to fit into one of those boxes. I don't care which one. Some people want to pay privately. Some people, that's their philosophy in life. They want to contribute back to society. You have to fit into one of those boxes. Most clients can't fit in to private pay or don't want to fit into private pay.
Right.
Can't fit into long-term care insurance. Medicare is not really an option. You really have no choice but to plan for Medicaid. Medicaid has become the insurance of the middle class. You end up in a nursing home, you really have to be thinking about Medicaid. Very true. Right? So, and that's where the look-back period comes in.
So now you say it's time to apply for Medicaid. And as part of this application process, the look-back period is where Medicaid you have to be at a certain financial number in order to qualify.
There's a whole host of criteria that we need to look at.
Absolutely. So as part of you coming down to that requisite number, you're allowed to spend down assets. There are some permissible spend downs, but what they don't want to see is that you just gave away the farm during that 5 years. So they will look back and see, did you transfer the deed to a home to a child? What gifts did you, I'm going to say children, because in most cases, that's what we're looking at here. But it could be loved ones or giving and they're going to look at everything that you've done, and they're going to determine whether or not that was a permissible spend down of your assets. And 5 years is a huge window.
That's right.
The difference of, between 70 and 75, 75 and 80,
huge.
That's a lifetime.
Absolutely.
It takes one slip and fall or one illness or one minor event to change the course of health. So it's significant. If people don't do the transfers the right way, what happens?
Well, that's that's what the practice is all about. That's what the practice of elder law is built upon. Coming into us at an early stage, setting up trust like the Medicaid trust that we've talked about before, and moving your assets in such a way that you're protecting them, you're preserving them, you're contemplating the look back period, but with enough time, hopefully, so that way it doesn't really impact your estate. And the end result is that you're preserving your assets for your kids and likely becoming eligible for Medicaid down the road.
It's a balance. I mean,
It's a
you
total
want to,
balance.
yeah, absolutely. And as part of the new changes, what we're talking about used to exclusively apply for nursing care, for institutionalized nursing care, going somewhere.
That's right.
The law has been changed that if you're looking for home care, which has become a more viable option to many people, you see the movement to age in place and to want to stay home. But now there's a look back period associated with that.
There is. So last year, and I think we've talked about this on prior shows, but last year there was a change in the look back period for home care. Prior law said that there was no look back period, so you could actually take your assets, move them today, and apply for home care tomorrow. So the change in the law is that there is now a 2.5-year look back period. Very confusing to people out there. I mean, even professionals in the practice area. I get calls all the time from social workers and other people like that are just questioning the implementation of the look back period. Where we stand right now, the new look back period has yet to be implemented.
So it was supposed to be last October, correct?
Yeah, the new law went into effect October 1st.
Okay.
With an implementation date of January 1st. Then that was postponed, and it was postponed again, and now it's been postponed, we think, until next year.
Okay.
And there's even some push by the New York State Bar right now to try to get them to take this off the books. But that's just chatter, right?
So again, I mean, even if it hasn't taken effect yet, you know it's on the horizon, you know it's coming. So
that's right. So
start thinking about it.
Well, here's a great message to get out to the listeners. If you have a loved one that may already be receiving care at home, or it's possible, it's likely that person will need a higher level of care or more hours at home over the near future. What we really want to do in 2021 is move those assets and apply for Medicaid, because we believe that if we move the assets and apply for Medicaid before the implementation of this new law, which we believe is going to be next year, nothing in the books on that, right? This is just our discussions with the Department of Health. But if that happens, we believe that we'll get in under the we'll beat the new law, so it'll be no look back period.
So act now.
Act now. I mean, this is not a sales pitch. It's just a lot of reasons to act now. You've got President Biden changing the tax laws. We can talk about that,
day.
Right? You've got changes to the look back period for home care. You've got who knows what's going to happen from a budgetary perspective. The trust that we use every day on a regular basis, get in and do it, because we don't know what the future has in store for us.
And that's another thing, too. When people think about estate planning, they always say the will. Do you have a will? And a will is great, and you should have a will. But a trust is an equally important vehicle, perhaps, a more important vehicle, because
absolutely
a will is only going to dictate what you want, the disposition of your assets. But to preserve those assets themselves, the trust is the vehicle to do that. And some people might not think, they might think, I don't have enough for that. And again, part of the misconceptions, there's always something that can be done. There's always a way to protect and preserve, and it's never too late.
The will is in my opinion, one of the least important documents that I could draft for you.
That's so true.
The trust is definitely, there's two types of trust. And again, we go into, we're trying to answer questions today, misconceptions. This has been coming up every single week in my practice, the difference between a revocable and irrevocable trust. In a perfect example of an article or a topic that I could write about every day, every week, and it's still going to hit a lot of people.
The irrevocable trust is only permissible for Medicaid.
Well, not necessarily. There's a lot of different types of irrevocable trust for tax planning purposes, estate planning purposes.
Oh,
But
yes.
the one that we use on a regular basis.
For elder law planning,
That's
yes,
right.
yes.
The one that we use on a regular basis is what we
the
call a
Medicaid
Medicaid
trust.
trust. And it's a form of asset protection, and it's a way to get past that 5-year look back period, preserve and protect your assets, and pass them on to your kids. The revocable trust, see, that's why I call the irrevocable trust a Medicaid trust, and the revocable trust, I call it a revocable trust because I have a nice Italian accent that sometimes messes up the pronunciation.
Oh, yeah, no, you hear irrevocable, but I say it like you.
But the revocable does not protect your assets.
Correct.
Big deal. Big deal. People, so many attorneys out there have just drafted revocable trust for people, and people think that they've got their planning in order, and they've done nothing from an asset protection perspective.
It's so true, and it's a nuance there that in the revocable trust, the beneficiary retains their power of appointment.
That's right.
They're still, they're benefiting
Complete
from the
control.
trust. They have control, and that is another difficult issue to grapple with. You have to relinquish control to do this preservation, and there's a psychological component
Absolutely.
to that. People don't want to let go of control. They feel that power is being stripped from them. They might feel age is taking over, and here they are of healthy, sound mind and body, and they're not ready to relinquish that control. So that's a tight walk as well.
It is. It's a fine line. I think I wrote a good article on that where it talks about giving up control without giving up control, right? And so
sounds worth the read. It really does.
You're coming to us, and it's on my website probably. You're coming to us because we draft these trusts in such a way to give you a certain degree of control without crossing the line, right? So, for instance, we allow you to have the power to remove and replace a trustee, right? So that's a really neat power to give to the creator of the trust. If they choose their child as a trustee of this irrevocable trust and they're not getting along anymore, we can remove them, right?
Okay.
That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't, at least we don't think as of right now, it doesn't cross the line. Now, things change. It's not inconceivable to think that some of the things that we've done in the past could change in the future.
Yeah.
That's why you got to keep looking at this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the laws are always going to change in a less favorable way
Most
to the
likely.
person creating the trust.
Most likely.
They're always going to come down in a way where the government, I hate to say it, is looking to take more and usually the house always wins. So dealing with someone like yourself who's knowledgeable and up to date as the laws and statutes are changing is so important.
That's
because
right.
you might be well-intentioned and think, hey, great, I've done this already, I'm set. You're probably not.
Nope.
So we hope
There's
today.
always something.
And people can, if they've done plans with another attorney, they can bring them to you. I mean, that's, you don't have
Absolutely.
to necessarily go back to where you drafted them.
Yep.
Perhaps you went to your general practicing attorney and now you hear this today, you watch this, and you want to go to a specialist. You can bring all of your documents to Sal and he will review them. You do have great articles in your blog on your website, and people can read most of the topics that we spoke about today, if not all. Sal's written and lectured on them. You could read them on
plantodayfortomorrow.com. All spelled out, one
fully
big
spelled
word.
out, yes. Plantodayfortomorrow.com. But it really is a wise domain name because that is what we're doing.
That's right.
Today affects tomorrow. Everything you do today affects tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Are you back lecturing in person or anything
We're
live?
actually taking in-person meetings if you can show me that you've been vaccinated.
Okay.
I've been vaccinated, and most people in my office are on their way to fully being vaccinated.
Okay.
And
So life is returning to somewhat normal
it totally
for you?
is. People don't want to work remotely anymore. Zoom was really neat, and it worked out really well last year, but I'd much rather have you in front of me. If I could sit in front of you, and this is what the practice means to our clients. People want to sit in front of me. If I could look at you in the eyes and tell you, don't worry about something, or I got it.
It's so different.
That goes a long way.
Oh, it's so true.
And that's why people come to me. They want reassurance. They want me to comfort them. They want me to tell them everything's going to be okay. Or we have a problem, but I know how to fix it.
Right. And you cannot replicate that feeling through a
can't
screen.
do that on the computer.
No,
You
absolutely
can't do that on
not.
the computer.
So the phone number to contact you in the Rye office for the Southern Westchester listeners and viewers?
914-925-1010.
And in Northern Westchester, your office, I believe, Yorktown Heights?
Yep. 914-245-2440.
And you're also on Facebook?
Yes.
So is
I don't do a lot on Facebook,
Okay.
but we are on Facebook.
Well, the website is great. And, I can't underscore enough the importance of getting this done and having these difficult conversations with family members and, again, not fun conversations, but necessary. I've seen
Yes.
it, and I know you've seen it more than I, what happens when this is not
That's
done.
right. That's
And
right.
everything that you worked a lifetime for could just slip
Oh,
through the cracks
I've seen,
so easily.
It's disastrous. It's disastrous.
And it's really about peace of mind,
yes.
for yourself and
Yeah.
knowing that, everything will be okay. So again, sweep off the cobwebs, bring in your old legal documents, time to look at it with the new set of lenses. Plan today for tomorrow.com. The offices of Sal Di Costanzo in northern and southern Westchester. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Jen.
I'm sure you're excited to get back on the lecturing circuit as well.
I am.
And I mean, gatherings are maybe something outdoors over the summer.
Matter of fact, last fall I put together an outdoor lecture, so it was even premature, but it worked.
Perfect.
I'm
Bring
definitely
food.
looking to do
People
that.
will come.
Yep.
Food and wine. That's
Food
how you'll
and
get
wine.
them there. And this is Jen Graziano. Thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, Westchester. Bye-bye.